Welcome back to Hannity. Funeral services held yesterday for the 3 Muslim North Carolina students who were killed earlier this week. A 23-year-old dental student, his wife, and her sister, pictured there on the screen. They were allegedly killed by this man. He is 46-year-old Craig Stephen Hicks. Well, almost immediately after the killing, some tried to label this a hate crime, but the U.S. attorney for that area said there wasn't any evidence of that yet. Watch.
I did want to make sure that folks knew that based on all the information that our office and that law enforcement has at this time, that the events of yesterday are not part of a targeted campaign against Muslims in North Carolina or anything other than an individual event that occurred. We don't have any information that this is part of an organized effort against Muslims.
Well, local police and the wife of the alleged shooter both say the shooting seems to have stemmed from a dispute over parking. And yet, earlier today, President Obama released this statement about the case, and it read this way in part, quote, "In addition to the ongoing investigation by local authorities, the FBI is taking steps to determine whether federal laws were violated. No one in the United States of America should ever be targeted because of who they are, what they look like, or how they worship." End quote. Joining me now with reaction, Fox News contributors David Webb and Tamara Holder, as well as criminal defense attorney Rebecca Rose Woodland. It's nice to see you all. David, the president has, as far as we know, zero evidence that the ethnicity or religion of the victims played any role in their murders.
Right.
Why would he inject that into this conversation?
Simply, and I want everyone to pay attention, this could be the Muslim Ferguson for the agenda on the left. Look at guys like Dean Obadala on February 11th at 2:18 a.m. Patrick Poole grabs the social media page of Hicks, the killer. This guy's a murderer. He is all these things. He's an atheist. He's a left-wing. He follows Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, Richard Dawkins. He loves BBW girls. This guy he's a hater. He has problems with his neighbors. But Dean Obadala, who just met with the president, a Muslim who just met with the president at his big council, goes out and tweets and ties it to the GOP, right-wing, and Tea Party. The police come in, the prosecutor, they're looking at this. They say this doesn't have the appearance. It's about driving a narrative when this guy murders 3 people. He has problems with his neighbors over loud noises, over everything. He has 2 parking spaces. All of this we knew at 2:18 a.m. But yet the president comes out, so does Keith Ellison, and they all...
But the president, but hold on, Tamara Holder, isn't it the most divisive thing you could do in the middle of people's fears and paranoia about this crime to suggest on the basis of no evidence at all that ethnicity played a role? Why would the president do that? That seems so reckless to me.
He didn't do that, though.
Yes, he did.
He said that there would be an investigation.
He said no one in the U.S. should ever be targeted because of who they are, what they look like. He has no evidence that happened.
Let me finish. He is doing an investigation just like there should be in Ferguson, just like there should be in any kind of hate crime, potential hate crime. Remember, if this were a Muslim killer who killed 3 innocent white Christian boys,
then it would be workplace violence, as it wasn't at Fort Hood. No, it'd be workplace violence. I want to get Rebecca. I want to get Rebecca in here.
You asked me a question.
Well, you haven't answered it adequately. I would say that.
How so?
Because
it doesn't answer the way you want it.
Because the president has, to restate, no evidence at all. There's no suggestion that this was a quote hate crime, a thought crime.
This is Professor Gates again. This is same approach.
That's exactly the problem. The president suggested in that phrase that it was a hate crime without saying it, and that's what he's not supposed to do. He's supposed to remain impartial. The president is supposed to remain impartial, and the facts, thus too far, do not lead us to believe it was a hate crime.
But doesn't this make people...
That's what an investigation does. You're a lawyer,
yes,
so that's what he said.
But he's the president. He's not acting as an attorney. He is acting as the leader of America.
He's acting as the spokesperson to all people who are afraid of potential killers who are out
But
there.
there's no. If I say to you, Tamara Holder, look, I'm not accusing you of shooting heroin. I'm just saying, and I'm looking at you, Tamara Holder, shooting heroin's bad. I'm implying that you're a drug addict, and he's implying that this guy was a bigot.
Let's follow a track record with President Obama, who's very clever at doing this. Professor Gates, Harvard, I don't have all the facts, but the police acted stupidly. His liaison in Ferguson, Al Sharpton, his go-to man on race, is reported, but he said he was his liaison. Trayvon Martin, if I had a son. What the president does is he cleverly inserts...
What happened in those cases? In those cases, there were no federal charges.
Let me
finish. Even though the left agenda really wanted them, guess what? It didn't happen.
And the point is not whether they're charges or not. The fact that they're not charges also shows that they were not a factor in hate
there was
crimes.
an investigation
But the
into
point
it.
is, but it's injected in the American culture's thought now because the president said that. Why does he say that?
bully
Why does he
pulpit.
just say there'll be an investigation? Not that additional, no one should be subject to anything based on their religion, their race. That adds to the fact that
No,
it's
it
a
doesn't.
No, but hold on.
subconscious.
But
It
why?
is.
I don't understand the obsession with motive. Isn't any murder where a guy takes a rifle and kills 3 innocents a hate crime by definition? So the idea that somehow you should be punished even more, you should be executed twice
Because
if
there
you
are
have
people
bias in
on
your
our
heart.
side who use
That's
certain
grotesque.
people who kill, and they use it to
Okay.
for
wait,
their
wait, wait,
agenda.
no, stop.
They're
Hate
terrorism.
crime.
Stop this.
Right.
They're
Dino
not doing
Badal.
crazy
About.
hate
Hold it,
crimes.
hang on.
There are people on the right
Tamara,
who like
stop.
to say that killers are doing it out of terrorist
No, no.
activity.
Well, the ones
So
who
the
scream
fact that
Allah
they're
Akbar
being
as they do
Those
it,
are-
that's a
those are
suggestion.
Tucker, let's
definitive
stop this
laws.
insanity.
All right, one at a time.
Right.
Dean Obadala
Right.
met with the president, right? Goes out on Twitter.
He's the
first-
unfunny comedian who met
Right,
with
the
Obama.
unfunny dean of comedy. Check him out on Twitter. He's in his stream still going on in this. He says, and he tries to tie this to the GOP, right wing, the Tea Party. He is not a right winger. This is Dean Obadiah who just met
Because
with
you
the
don't want to
president.
take him as a right winger.
No, because he's a leftist
He's not.
who goes out and pushes
Come on,
a narrative.
I mean,
and it's a
doesn't-
lie.
It's not
No, but
about that.
shouldn't facts? I mean, let's be totally honest. I actually partly think of the Muslim families out there, the immigrants to this country. Were thinking, does America accept me or not? And they're watching the president say this, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm under attack.
That's
it makes
exactly
everybody
it.
more paranoid
It's a
and makes people hate
subconscious
each
paranoia.
other.
Right. And
How
it
about-
incites, subconsciously, it incites people to dislike each other and to then have racial distinction when we shouldn't have any in this country.
And by the way,
point
Muslim
we
is a
shouldn't
religion,
have
not a
that.
race, which is another problem with this. On top of this, how about using these families as a political point, which is disgusting, to use the tragedy of 3 people being murdered as a political point?
If he didn't
Tamara,
come
will
out
you at
and
least
say
agree
something.
that the president's words carry greater weight than those of any human being on the planet, maybe
Absolutely.
save for the Pope? And so he ought to choose them very carefully, especially when they pertain to something as volatile as a murder. Shouldn't he wait to imply anything until he knows for certain? This is reckless to talk like this.
He never does.
You think it's reckless. I think that, like you said
Well, how
earlier,
can you not see it as
because
reckless?
I don't see it as reckless. By you just said people are afraid that they've come to this country to be American, and they may be afraid. So he's saying we will investigate and we will determine whether or not
No,
any
his
crime here.
words targeted
Nobody
because of their
should.
color
he did
or
not
their
say.
religion.
Well,
did
he
not say
doesn't
this
need
case.
to say that.
Nobody should.
Once there's an investigation, he's concerned about the people who
Right, but if
passed
he
away.
didn't,
That's it.
then
It
you would
doesn't-
say that he didn't say anything
He-
timely
No, it
enough.
doesn't
You know
You're
what
not
it
going to
is.
like what he
Attributed
says
to any
regardless.
racism.
No, you know what it is.
Whatever he says, it's not good
He
enough.
sees a different country than the one I live in. I live in a very tolerant country, actually. He sees a very bigoted country, and that's the difference. I mean, that's my view anyway. Thank you all very much.
Good to see you.